So thank you all for being here. I think diversity and inclusion is something that we should absolutely all be talking about in the events industry. In my opinion, we are a group of professionals that touch probably the most lives during our career paths than most other career trajectories will. We've got hundreds of people that event planners will touch, maybe thousands. Hotels have way more than that, people coming in and out and stuff like that. So we need to be really cognizant of some of the practices that we're putting into place, or some of the practices that we need to put into place that are really going to help some populations out that we're maybe traditionally not really thinking of. I decided to do this session last year after attending Cascadia for the first time. How many first-time attendees do we have? A lot. Cool, yeah. So I loved Cascadia last year. I attended it for the first time. I thought it was really great. I made so many awesome connections. I learned so much. I really think it's a great opportunity to network with other professionals and figuring out what's working for some people, what's maybe not working for some others. When I attended last year, I was a meeting planner, and I actually brought back a ton of ideas to my organization that we were able to implement. I'm now on the supplier side, so it's really exciting for me to be able to connect with other hotel professionals like myself. I'm a brand new hotel professional. I've only been in the position for 6 months, so learning from people who have been in the position longer than I have has been really awesome. So if you're a first-time attendee, I really encourage you to get out there and network. Meeting professionals, we have to be outgoing for the most part, so you're going to find a friend. You can walk up to anybody and introduce yourself, and they're going to be more than happy to help you with whatever they're doing. I found it really helpful to find organizations that were really similar to mine last year and connect with those people. So look at the app, figure out who's like you, who's not, because we're including diversity. And like I said, just really share some ideas. I think that's what Cascadia is really all about. So last year when I attended Cascadia, I found it really interesting that in an industry that's really dominated by women, that we did not have a diversity and inclusion session. I think MPI in general, we're getting better about including diversity in our trainings and stuff, but I feel like we're not quite there yet. So I left Cascadia last year with my sole mission to attend this year and to present a session on diversity and inclusion. And here I am. So who's this handsome devil in front of me? So I attended Texas A&M University. I actually moved up from Texas roughly 3 or 4 years ago now. I got my start in special events at Texas A&M. A little bit different than most people. I was actually working in our transportation services department. I was a special events coordinator for our visitor parking, which is actually way more interesting than it sounds. So we coordinated all the parking and stuff for average events like conferences and stuff like that you guys all do, all the way up to any sporting events that came into A&M. So that's the Division I football, baseball, basketball. I touch thousands of people every Saturday during football seasons and stuff, and I really, really enjoyed this job. So from Texas, I wanted to get out of Texas, one, for the heat, because it's incredibly hard to do anything down there in the heat, and two, mainly because of politics. Texas just really doesn't align with what I believe, and so I started trying to figure out where I could go up north, and the Oregon Society of CPAs was the first place that gave me a job, and that's how I landed in basically Portland, Oregon. It was my first time ever being in the Pacific Northwest. And it has really been a change from going to not only hot and no rain to just consistently dark. Everything is wet, so there's moss everywhere. It's just really, it's such an interesting experience. So I was at the Oregon Society of CPAs as their seminar coordinator for about 6 months. Their conference manager left to go back to the hotel that I currently work at right now. I moved up to the conference manager position, and at that point I was in charge of doing all of their large educational seminars. So I ran about 20 or 30 events each year for CPAs in Oregon. It was really fun. It really got me started in actual meeting planning versus just special events, and I was able to learn a lot through that and through mainly attending things like this. From there, I wanted to see what the hotel side of things looked like, and so I joined the Embassy Suites at Portland, Washington Square. It's not the downtown property, it's the one in Tigard by the mall. That's who we are. So I'm the convention services manager today. I've only been there for about 6 months, and now I work with meeting planners like you to make your event happen within our hotel. And that's been a really exciting career change for me. I've learned so much in the last 6 months. I'm still learning every single day, but it has been really cool to see the supplier side of the industry as well, and I feel like it's made me a more well-rounded professional in this industry. And most recently, I did earn my CMP last November, so if you're, yes, thank you. That was a hard process. So if you're thinking about your CMP, I'd love to talk to you more about it. I sat through the test in the most recent testing time, so I can answer questions, I can help you with what you need to study and stuff like that. I'd love to talk to you more about it. So I don't know if anybody else is thinking this, but let me tell you, if there was a white guy up here talking about diversity and inclusion, I would probably wonder why. And I feel like that's some of the responses I've gotten. I was talking to some people last night at the poker tournament, and I was like, oh, I'm doing diversity and inclusion. Their eyes were like, what? Why are you? Yes, I'm a white male, and I'm doing diversity and inclusion, but I'm actually a transgender man. So this was me back in 2012. I had a glow up just like tremendously. I feel like I look a lot better. I hope you agree with me.
Yeah.
So in 2012, this is me on my high school cross country team. So I was biologically born female, and I went through medical transitions to look like I do today. So back in high school, I was what people would consider your token lesbian, and I say that because I was the only gay person in our high school, or at least the only one that was out. I know I was not the only one. Yeah. So I feel like it's really important, that's why I'm doing this today. I feel like it's really important for people like me who are a little bit more outspoken, a little bit more outgoing, to put ourselves out there, because I'm willing to take whatever comes with this, while some people are not, and if I can get out there and show that transgender people are just people, I think everything will be okay. So that was me in 2012. When I got to A&M, I realized that there was a lot more to the LGBT acronym than just the LGMB. There came transgender. I did not know what that meant, but I ended up meeting a couple of transgender individuals while I was at A&M. I really just learned from their experiences. I started doing my own research and found out that transgender basically just means that your mind doesn't really align with your biological sex, and that's how I had always felt, but without that terminology, I didn't really know how to connect that together until I heard transgender. And so I came out in 2013 socially, which means I changed my name to Chase, and I told all my friends, hey, this is who I am, please refer to me as male pronouns. I did not come out to my parents at that time, so I was not able to medically transition and start testosterone because there's a huge difference here, and my parents would have known. So, So as I got close to graduating in 2016, I realized that something needed to change. I was about to start applying for jobs, and I knew the background checks and stuff weren't going to pass. I wasn't going to be able to use the name that I was going by on resumes and stuff like that. It just wasn't basically going to be acceptable. So in 2016, I came out to my parents. We're from the Deep South, mainly Alabama, so it was interesting, but we have a really good relationship now. We've told the rest of my family. It's also been really interesting, but we're getting there. So that was in 2016. I started testosterone shots, and in February of 2017, I legally changed my name and gender on all of my legal documentation. So now I am today legally recognized by the federal government as Chase and as a male. A couple months later, in May of 2017, I had top surgery, and that is exactly as painful as it looks like it is. So yeah, it was really painful, but it was definitely the highlight of my life. That has really set me free in a lot of things. It may not seem like a big deal to some people, maybe those cuts do, but in general, before this, I was not able to wear certain clothing. I couldn't wear anything that was tight because it just really showed what I had on my chest, and it was really hard to pass as a male like that. And so this was a really pinnacle point for me. I'm about to pass 3 years of that, and like I said, it really changed my life. And then today, I am happily engaged to this super beautiful lady. I've been on testosterone for 4 years now. I'm passing my 3 years of top surgery, and I'm just here to tell my story because I hope that it will make people realize that I am just like you. So if you ask people, if you ask my friends some things that define me, they may tell you that I'm trans. I hope they don't. It's not really good to out trans people, so don't tell people that. But they're probably going to tell you that my time at A&M really, really defined me. So I'm super proud of my degree. I'm super proud of the ring that I wear, like Aggies are. Yeah, get them Aggies. So I'm super proud of that. However, A&M has not always been a great place for people like me. Just to give you a little bit of background, in 1985, Gay Student Services, which was the gay club at A&M, actually had to sue the university to exist as an organization. So that was only 40 years ago or so. When I arrived in 2012, A&M had consistently made the Princeton's review list of the top 20 least LGBT-friendly schools in the entire nation. They were not only the only public school on that list, they were in the top 10, and they were the only school that was not religiously affiliated. So going into A&M as, at that point, a lesbian and then somebody who was transgender was potentially really rough, but I decided A&M is where I needed to be. I really enjoyed everything about the campus, and I felt a calling to be there. So thought I'd be okay, but sure enough, the year that I arrived in 2013, the Texas legislature, along with A&M Student Senate, actually introduced a religious funding bill. It made it where students could try to opt out of funding the GLBT Resource Center on campus, on our campus and on all other campuses across Texas. The bill actually ended up passing. We protested. This is where I really found my activism voice for my community, and made a lot of good connections and stuff like that, and decided this is kind of what I wanted to keep teaching people. It passed, but the student body president vetoed it, and there's a lot of shady stuff going on in the background. So it actually never went through, and the Texas legislature actually got rid of it too because they realized that it was really polarizing and that it was going to affect business in Texas. So later on in 2013 and 2014, I joined Aggie Transition Camps and Fish Camp, which are the nation's largest student orientation camps. I became a counselor and a co-chair for these organizations. And while I was there, once again, like a lot of things that I've encountered, they had never had a transgender person want to be on their staff or in their ranks. And so I helped them write inclusive policies that are now in place so that other LGBT campers and counselors can follow in our footsteps and continue to enjoy A&M just like the rest of us have. In 2016, right before I left, I created Transcend. It's the only student organization that's recognized by the university that supports transgender students. And when you consider that in 1985, we had to sue to exist, I felt this is a really big deal, something I needed to get done before I left. And finally, right before I left, the summer right before I left, in 2017, I helped organize A&M's march in the Houston Pride Parade. This was a really big deal because we got the university to sponsor it and they paid for it completely, so that was really awesome. Now, I don't tell you all these things to brag about my accomplishments at A&M. I am super proud of the work that I did there. I would go back to A&M in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity to and stuff. I tell you this because it only takes one voice or a small collection of voices to make a change, and I really hope that's why you're all here today, because as meeting planners, if we can start making these changes within our organizations and within our meetings and within our hotels and things like that, that's going to spread out. Because like I said, we touch a majority of lives in our time, and we have the biggest platform to make the biggest difference in people's lives. So I really hope that's why you're all here today. So A&M has these, we call it the Aggie Honor Code, and it says an Aggie does not lie, does not cheat, does not steal, does not tolerate those who do. In our LGBT community on campus, we actually came up with a different version of it, and so today I'm going to apply it to the same way. So we're going to say a meeting professional does not lie or make someone else lie about who they are, cheat themselves or someone else out of a positive experience, or steal anyone's dignity, nor tolerate those who do. So I feel like if we can like really keep that in mind as we go into our planning and stuff, we'll make better events and things like that. So I just want to do a really quick diversity exercise. You don't have to get up, you don't have to introduce yourself to anybody. I hate when I have to do that. So my hope is that this is an eye-opener for removing our rose-colored glasses. So in my opinion, it's kind of hard to recognize privilege when we're not thinking about it in a very specified box. When we think of privilege, most of you are probably thinking of like white privilege, but there's a lot more privilege that some of us have that we don't recognize. And so what I'm asking you to do is there's going to be a statement that will flash up on the board. If this statement applies to you, if you'll just raise your hand and keep it up until the next one comes up and you can put it down. Participation is absolutely voluntary. Please don't participate if you don't want to. If you don't feel comfortable raising your hand to a certain statement, please don't feel like you have to. But it is, I've done this exercise with a lot of people, and to me it really puts things in perspective. So like I said, participation completely voluntary. So, please raise your hand if English was not your first language. Cool. And there's definitely going to be some things in here that also, there's one in the back, that don't apply to certain people, and that's totally fine. But if your hand is down when I read these statements, please think about what it means for those people that their hand is up. That's what's really important. So I have a visible or invisible disability. Yeah, cool. It's not easy for me to find something to eat when I'm away from my home. It is not always easy for me to find healthcare services and providers. I fear discrimination, or it is legal to discriminate against me from healthcare providers and services. When interacting with businesses, clients, or customers, I fear differential treatment or discrimination. Work and school holidays rarely align with my cultural or religious beliefs. I have faced or faced discrimination because of something I cannot change about myself. I have been whistled at, touched, or grabbed by a stranger. I worry that I'm being profiled when interacting with authority figures. I have feared for my safety when entering gendered public spaces such as bathrooms or locker rooms. I worry that I may be passed up for a job opportunity because of something I cannot change about myself. I have felt unsafe walking alone. I have feared violence because of my identity. I have been told that I need to gain or lose weight. I have considered changing my appearance, behavior, or speech patterns to avoid discrimination. When filling out registration forms, it can be difficult to identify with checkboxes. My intelligence, expertise, or professionalism has been questioned because of something I cannot change about myself. I worry that when I react with emotion, my opinion will be dismissed. I'm not certain that I'll be able to access or participate in all aspects of an event without reaching out to organizers. Cool. So I kind of went over what I thought the purpose of it was, but does anybody else want to contribute with like how they felt doing the exercise or what it meant to them? Yeah, let's hear it, Jennifer.
I felt like I need to identify with a lot more people because
Yeah.
I didn't raise my hand as much as I saw other people raise their hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
if you
think
didn't
about it.
If you didn't hear Jennifer in the back, she basically just said that she didn't raise her hands for as many things as she thought she would have, and that as many people in the room did. So identifying and recognizing, where some of our pitfalls are is really important. And thank you, Jennifer. That was a great answer, and that's what I was really hoping for. So it can be really hard to recognize privilege when we're not thinking about it in a standardized box. So some of those, I tried to include a little bit of everything. So we had a little bit of disability on there, we had a little bit of gender stuff, whether that's talking about gender in the terms of me, like transgender individuals or women, and especially there was some stuff on there about like introverts and extroverts, race stuff. So it's really important to think everyone, no matter who you are, likely has some form of privilege over someone else. So we're not all in this game saying, oh, like I have it worse off than you do, or I have it better off than you do. They're likely, no matter who you are, you have some level above someone else in a room that you're in, I promise. And once again, it can be hard to recognize these planning pitfalls if we're not aware they exist. So hopefully some of those will help you recognize where they exist at. I centered some of this around, MPI has done a recent research report in 2018. They did the state of inclusion in meetings and events. I don't know if any of you remember getting this in your emails. I did, I participated. You can find it online if you just Google MPI research report, it'll pull right up. It's a great report. It kind of tells you a little bit about where we're kind of standing at. They didn't really have that many responses if you include that we have like 16,000 people that are part of MPI. But here's a really good example. We have 84% female responses out of 1,000. That proves to us that our industry is absolutely dominated by females, and we're one of the only industries that is like that. 15% responded, they were male, and then 1% other/gender non-binary, and I was part of that 1% somewhere in there. I found this really funny, so 1% of 1,000 is not one, but I did do a recent research report from NPI, or it was some kind of meeting thing, and they only had like 100 people respond, and there was like a 1% or less than 1% like transgender option or whatever, and I had clicked that on the thing, and I was like, huh, how funny, that was me. That was that one person. So, cool. So they measured diversity and inclusion on abilities, so that was emotional, mental, and physical, cultures, customs, languages, beliefs, demographic characteristics, age, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status, your health, so your allergens and your medical conditions, personal characteristics such as political beliefs, learning preferences, and motivation, and professional background. So this is things like education, experience, and jobs. So something that I found really interesting about this was they'd actually put sexual orientation under personal characteristics. I definitely moved that to demographic characteristics because it kind of seems to me like personal characteristics, according to them, are things you can change. And trust me, you cannot change your sexual orientation. That is a demographic. Please don't put that under personal characteristics. So what they found out of the meeting planners that they did survey was that some already have diversity and inclusion policies in practice. So 31% did it to meet attendee expectations. 20% were doing it to meet legal requirements. 19% were trying to enhance their bottom line. 13% were there to attract and retain staff. 10% were to enhance their reputation, and 7% were other. Didn't give anything else in that. I don't know what other stands for, but it was there. So we're going to take a look at why some of those said that they were, wrong, sorry. 56% of those that said they had diversity and inclusion policies said they have written diversity and inclusion policies. So not only is it just out there in the organization, they kind of talk about it, they have something in their manual that says these are our diversity and inclusion policies. However, only 42% of those hosted those statements on their website. Now I can tell you, if you're a meeting planner for organization, if you're a supplier of any kind, if you're a hotel, one of the most important things you can do to up your clientele is to put these policies on your website. My opinion is, why do you have them if you're not going to advertise them? Because you've got people like me that's a part of a minority population, and I am specifically looking for you to have these. If you don't, I will not give you my business because I don't know where you stand. And I know we're a consumer society, my dollars matter, your dollars matter, and if you don't have these on here, I'm going to go somewhere else that does. So please keep that in mind. If you don't already have these on your website, if you don't have written inclusion policies, please write them first and then put them somewhere where people can see them. So some barriers they found were 40% had a gap in knowledge, so that's great. Thank you for attending. That's why you're here. 14% said they had no leadership support. 20% said they had no budget. And 13% said they had no time. So do we have any Game of Thrones fans in here?
Yes.
Yeah. So do we remember the infamous Shane Bell from, what was that season, whatever? Yeah, okay. So we're going to go through and say, no. There's no reason. If you are meeting planning, you have time to do diversity and inclusion tactics. There's honestly no excuse here. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be rude. If you go into our events with a diversity and inclusion mindset, it just comes naturally. As you're planning the event, you know what you're doing. You're putting it down there. So no time is not an excuse in my opinion. If you're planning your meeting, you can plan for diversity and inclusion. Secondly, no, this is not a thing. Almost everything that I'm going to go over today is completely free. If it's not free, it's very minimal cost. For you meeting planners, it's mostly free, I promise. And then the most important thing to remind everybody of is the return on investment for inclusion practices is tenfold. And I say that because, like I just said, if you put these policies on your website, you're getting people who are actively looking for them to come, and you're not shunning those who are not doing it. So definitely put them on your website and make it known. And then finally, to me, the biggest shameful thing here is no leadership support. So I've dealt with this in past positions. I've dealt with people who I don't know why we're doing this. It's an older organization. People don't care about stuff like this. Some people don't care about stuff like this, but the people who do care about it are not attending your meetings. I promise that. The people who absolutely care are not going to attend your meeting or your facility or whatever you're doing. But the people who don't care, they're not going to care if you do these things. I promise. Like they're not noticing it. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. So go ahead and activate all these policies. Do them. Secondly, diversity and inclusion practices are just really good for business. We've been shown time after time again in studies that if they're on there, where business leaders that encourage diversity and inclusion, they outperform, they recruit, they just get better business in general. And this is proven through many, many studies. So why are we not doing it? And then finally, I wrote this in really old-timey handwriting because I feel like this is what it is. So diversity and inclusion is just about being politically correct. No, it's absolutely not about just being politically correct. There is so much more to it than this. And it's just mainly, inclusion efforts give everyone a voice and they give everyone a value. So they make everyone feel included at your events, they feel welcome, they want to participate, they want to be there, and that's why it's important to do it. So they also kind of looked at who the industry is best serving. No surprise. Female, younger, and food restrictions came next. And I think this is really great because we are an evolving world. Our food restrictions are getting a little bit harder and stuff to deal with, but we're getting better about dealing with them, and they're only on the second tier. Older LGBT individuals and ethnic minorities were the third least served, and those with disabilities and non-dominant religions were the least served. And I find this really surprising that disability, and if you ask a person with a disability, they will tell you this, that our meetings are horrible, absolutely horrible about including those with disabilities. And it's so surprising to me because disabilities has been a protected class more so than some other things have. So it's absolutely ridiculous that we're in 2020 now and disabilities is the last thing on this list, in my opinion. So why should you care about diversity and inclusion practices? Well, hopefully because everyone in this room is a good person that cares about other people and you want to make other people feel welcome, you want to make them feel included. If you're more like me, and I like this, but if you're more like me in other senses where business matters, it is great for business. So I just pulled some quick statistics. Organizations with above average diversity outperform competitors by 46 to 58%. 67% of job seekers today consider diversity an important factor, and 50% of those of us in our current jobs want our jobs to do more. There is a strong correlation between higher than average diversity and higher than average profits. And companies with leadership that made diversity a priority are 45% more likely to capture a larger portion of the market and 70% more likely to enter a new market. This should be all the proof you need to be sitting in this room right now and learning something from it. It is good for business and you need to be doing it. Y'all really nervous because I was clapping. So the first thing we're going to be covering is ability. So it's those with mobility, visually impaired, hearing impaired, cognitive disabilities, and those with learning disabilities. So I kind of tried to break these presentations up into site selections, which applies to your meeting planners who are walking through your sites and figuring out who you're going to work with, but also your suppliers. So if you're a supplier, please pay attention to this section. We can talk about what our hotels are doing or what they're not doing and what we can better do to help these meeting planners, to help just average transient people that are coming into our hotels. So like I said, I really tried to make this presentation really handle both sides as best I could. So here we have disabled spaces. And it's great, they've got 3 of them. Besides the snow, there's a bigger issue here. There is no what I would consider like an offloading area, so that's the little part that comes out with the stripes and stuff. That's for a van to pull up and actually to be able to unload those that are using mobility devices. If you park 3 different disabled vans right there, you're not going to be able to get people off that van. And I know this because I used to be a bus driver and I used to drive ADA accessible vans around. And it's just really not great when you don't have that space. And I mean, this is ADA rules. Like this is what is required by the ADA to have in your parking lots. Your van spaces have to be a little bit bigger. That 5-foot space.
I just want to make a comment, especially to the people who are with hotels, convention centers in this room, because this has been important to me since the ADA passed, and more so since I needed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to all check your spaces by using a scooter or a wheelchair, and come with me when I try to get back to my room tonight. That's all I want to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, people with disabilities are the most excluded at our events right now for things like this. Now, hotels. I mean, if you're, the ADA has some, if you're not renovating, you don't have to do some of these things, which is stupid and horrible. But like I said, I drove the vans that she's talking about. I drove these ADA vans around, and I have a picture here. You can see right there. So that's an ADA accessible van. Yes, that car is technically over the line by a foot or so, but it wouldn't have mattered. That car could have been in his lines, and that person still would not have been able to get out of that van. Those ramps are incredibly bulky. They're like 3 feet when they drop out of the car. So most of the times when I was doing this for people, I was having to drop them off in the parking lot, just out like in the parking lot. Yeah, and it's not safe. It's not good for those that are doing it. It blocks traffic for one. It's not safe for those in the chair. Sometimes there's also a ramp missing here, so now not only have you unloaded that person, but they can't get up on the curb right there, so that's pointless. So like I said, I have personal experience with this. I can talk to you more about it, and yeah, so you just need to make sure that your parking lots are correct and that they've got this, and if they don't, please improve. And like I said, in my opinion, 5 feet of space, although it is ADA approved, it's really not enough space. If you're going to redo your parking lots, please think about adding a little bit more in there. Okay. So one of the biggest things right now, if you ask a mobility user, is that ramps. Ramps are the biggest thing that they don't have enough of right now. Like, they can't get to certain events and stuff because there's just physically not a way for them to get to it. And then as far as having a ramp, it's different of, if your front staircase is stairs and your back entrance is ramps. So okay, yeah, cool. We have a ramp, it's in the back. So now we're making that ADA accessible person enter from a different place than the rest of us are. Do you want to do that? Like, no, that's humiliating. Like, that's not something that we should be doing. So ramps is our biggest thing, so we're going to keep that in mind. This is an actual off the ADA website. ADA has a great, awesome tools to figure out kind of what we're looking for. But these are just like ramp standards. We have to include how high the rise over run is. If you've got a ramp that's 5 feet in the air, I can't even walk up that. So, a chair is certainly not going to be able to get up to it. This was also pulled off ADA's website. It just kind of gives like an overall picture of what your ramps should be looking like. So you've got your 1/12 rise over run there, how much landing space you need, when you need handrails, when you don't. I don't have time to get into all this today, but please check out the ADA website. They'll give you all the information you need. And this comes with like due diligence. So this is the legal requirements right here. I mean, this is like written into our national law. So you've got to figure out what you're missing here and get it fixed. Secondly, with ramps, I don't know if everybody's noticed these little dots on the ramps. I found it really interesting. The River House actually has it like built into the cement. Usually they're yellow like this, so it looks like River House kind of just poured their cement with like a thing. But usually those are actually plastic. You put the cement down and you put those down in the plastic or down in the cement while it's thing. And so those actually, it's not like a run thing where like the chair stops going. That's not what it's there for. They're truncated, and it's for those that are visually impaired using canes. They know where the edge of the sidewalk is. They know where a ramp is about to be, so they're not just going to walk off into traffic and stuff like that. So it's really important that we have these. If you get this version of it, these can be replaced. Like once they wear out, you can just redo the cement, pop another one down. If you just pour the cement, it's a little bit harder. So keep that in mind. Cool, so now we're out of the parking lot, we're walking up to the front door, and we want to make sure that our front doors are wide and they're automatic. Now I know a lot of hotels today are definitely moving towards automatic doors. Some of us are in properties that are a little bit more historical, and we may not have this. However, you can add the ADA accessible stuff to your door without changing the whole thing. You got to get it in there. So this is really important. We have to keep in mind that when mobility users are in wheelchairs or they're in scooters or whatever else they're using, how hard those doors are to open sometimes. And some of our facilities, our doors are like really, really heavy. They're really, really wide. And they're hard to get open. So we need to make sure that we've got some way for somebody that it needs those accessibility resources to get into our hotel, or they're not going to come. And then we also need to make sure the same thing, interior doors. So this was a really great example I found. This is an ADA accessible hotel room. They have an automatic door on their interior door, which is not as common, and it is kind of expensive. So, hotels that are doing this, great on you. But if for some reason they're not, you can easily go in there and check how heavy that door is going to be to open. And you want to make sure that once that door is open, it's maneuverable inside. You have to include, there's like a 5-foot diameter that needs to be around for a chair to actually be able to move around that area. And so you may not use a chair, you may not use a scooter, you may not use a mobility device, but you can do this stuff on your own. You can just walk in and really just take a second and think, if I was here, what would I be doing? So something else that a lot of us really don't think about is door handles. So knobs and lever handles are much better for those that are, they're easier to open, and so those with, yes, so, no, yes. So they're easier to open for those with trouble grasping, reduced motor control, etc. I had a gentleman that had Parkinson's at one of my meetings one time, and he couldn't get in one of the doors at the facility that we're at because it was a round knob and he was shaking. And so, if that would have been a lever handle, that would have been much easier for everybody to get into. So, especially facilities here, if you have the budget and you've got these knobs, see if you can upgrade to the lever handles because it's going to make a big difference for a lot of people. Also, suppliers, we really need to talk about something. It's our carpet. It's all ugly most of the time. It is really ugly. But that's not why we're talking about it in general. We need to talk about not having carpet as absolutely much as possible. So I found it kind of interesting that the River House has as much carpet as it does in its convention center. So we really want to eliminate carpet as much as we can. I know we keep carpet in our event spaces because it reduces the noise and stuff. River House has done a really good job of putting the soundboards and stuff up against the walls. That helps them as well. So maybe not as feasible in your meeting space, but definitely like in your hallways. We really want to avoid as much carpet and rugs as we can. Rugs are also a really big deal. We have them in front of our, if you have tile, you probably have them in front of your lobby. We have them. Those rugs, if you're going to use them, they need to be secured to the floor in some way. So they've got like rug movers that keep things from sliding. This is also a legal obligation here because not only can that get caught on a chair or on a scooter, somebody could trip if that corner comes up, and then now your hotel is in deep doo-doo, basically. So if you've got rugs, find a way to secure them down, and whenever possible, please don't use them. I put the luggage card on here though because this is a really good way for those of us who do not use mobility devices to check how plush the carpet is, how thick it is, how big that padding is underneath. I am really impressed with the River House's carpet. It's pretty hard. It's not really spongy and stuff. And so that's a really good. It makes it easier for the chairs and stuff to get around. But if you don't use any of these devices, you can take a luggage cart and you can just roll it, or you can put something on it, and you can get a really good feel for how hard that is going to be for a mobility user to get through that hotel. So once again, use tile and hardwood whenever possible. Those on wheels are definitely going to thank you. So now we're moving into the lobby, and this is my actual hotel lobby. So as I say, we have a rug there, but we have mostly tile in our hotel, which I am really proud about. But we need to make sure the counters are accessible. So is this another corner? Oh, okay. So you'll see our counter on the side right here. I've kind of already talked to our management about not putting things on our ADA accessible counters. That's what it was built for, and it doesn't need to be blocked. So don't use ADA accessible counters for displays. It's rude. If somebody with a chair had to come up there and talk to that lobby attendant, they'd have to move that stuff out of the way. And once again, that's just not inclusive. Why is it there? Find another display space for it. We're a hotel. We have plenty of chairs. We have plenty of table stuff that we can put out. So really avoid taking up ADA accessible spaces with advertisements and things like that. Awesome. So same thing, if the hotel has a restaurant or a bar of any type, any kind of seating areas, we really want to make sure that they also have dedicated ADA accessible seating. I got this picture from a guy's Twitter. He was active MSer, so he has multiple sclerosis. And he posted this picture, and I'm just judging by the way he looks. He's probably in his 40s. And he said that was the first time he'd come across an accessible bar in a restaurant. He was at least 40, 40 years, and he'd never come across it before. And so our hotel, this is ours on my hotel on the other side. Once again, I've talked to them about not having those chairs there. I went to go take this picture, and I said, why are these chairs here? Oh, well, we move them if a person comes up. No, it's just not acceptable. It's not accessible. They need to be gone. The chairs need to be there. That way we're not getting anybody's way when they want to roll up to that counter. But I am really excited that we do have an ADA accessible bar. A lot of places still do not. And if you do, a lot of places are super, super guilty of using those as point of sale areas and stuff. They'll actually plot their cash register there. They'll put drinks and food staging there. Once again, that needs to be what it's designed to be there for. We don't use anything else for random things. If it's an ADA accessible area, it needs to be an ADA accessible area. Second thing that I found really interesting was you need to have varying amounts of seating, and I should have thought of this myself because I am young, but I already have back issues. I don't like sitting in bar stools. They make my back hurt really bad. There are some people that physically cannot climb up on bar stools, so if you're going to have a restaurant, you're going to have a bar, make sure you have an equal amount of lower seating and bar seating. That way people are a little bit more comfortable when they're sitting there. So does anybody have any opinions about this setup right
It's
here?
way too tight.
It's way too tight.
Cool, yeah, absolutely. So this is way too tight for just you and me to get through here. Now imagining somebody trying to navigate this with a wheelchair, with a scooter, even somebody with a cane, it would be almost impossible to get through this space. And like I said, this is what I love about diversity and inclusion practices. A lot of these things are just good meeting practices, period. So please don't touch your rooms like this. This is way too close. Everybody's gonna put their butts in each other's faces. It's just not fun. Don't touch your rooms like this. So Dixie Chicks, and making a comeback, are here to remind us. So they're making a comeback, and they're here to remind us that we need wide open spaces in our ballroom. So this is a ballroom in Hong Kong. This is superiorly wide open spaces. They've done a fantastic job setting this. I couldn't really tell if it was a computer rendered floor plan or if it was a real picture, but regardless, it's a really good example. The chairs are pushed out, so if someone is sitting there on either side, there is still enough room to navigate that, and that's what you have to be really cognizant of. It's not only when the room is set with no one in it, you have to include the chairs are pushed out for a body, can people navigate in between there at that point? So this is my map from my hotel. So you want to ask if your vendors are able to provide you with a facility map, and it needs to include, ADA accessible bathrooms, places that staircases are. So you can see ours. We don't actually have ADA inclusive bathrooms on the map, but it's because every bathroom that we have on our first floor is ADA accessible. So it's no problem for us. But we've marked all of our staircases, so everywhere there's not a staircase, we know. Hopefully that our attendees understand that they can get anywhere in our downstairs area without any issues because they know where the staircases are going to be. We have our atrium with that, it's like 3 stairs right there at the very beginning of it. We have ramps that come up on either side of it. So in my opinion, our hotel does a really good job, and all of our hallways and stuff are tile and stuff too. So I'm really proud of our hotel in that sense. So now for the meeting planners in the room, as far as registration goes, there's many ways to word this question, but you can absolutely ask, please indicate any physical needs that we should be aware of. That helps you prepare. You know what's coming to your event. You know what's going to be there. You can work with the hotel and ask them, hey, you know what? I've got somebody that has a hearing impairment. Do you have services on site that can help them out? Or, I've got an ADA accessible person. What do your ADA accessible rooms look like? Can I see one before we get there and really know what we're going into? And you really want to follow up with these folks that answer these questions. In my opinion, if you ask any open question on a registration, you should absolutely be following up with it anyway. So you can ask them, will you be bringing anybody with you? Because they may not think to actually include that, but they may need help getting through, food lines or just getting in the door, stuff like that. So you want to ask them, is anybody going to be coming with you? And then, how can we make this a good experience for you? So once again, that's really talking to these people and saying, hey, what can I do to make your experience just as accessible as everyone else's is going to be? Unrelated, kind of, but I actually had a person, I'm not going to get into food and beverage today, I didn't really have time for it, but talking about dietary restrictions, I had a meeting planner that came to me in my new role and say, hey, I've got this person that just has all these food allergies, and I just really don't know what to do. And so she kind of listed out the allergies, and I was like, okay, well, can you send me that person's contact information, and I'll get in touch with them and figure out what they need. And so I contacted this person. I said, hey, your meeting planners told me that we got some dietary restrictions that we're dealing with. How can I make our hotel work for you? What do you want to eat? What is good for you? And so she answered me back. She's like, I love chicken, and I love this, and I love that. And so every meal, we had a specific meal for this person. It wasn't just like a gluten-free meal. It was literally labeled with this person's name on it. And this lady, actually, I'm the commission services manager. I'm in the back lot for my events. I'll come out and meet you when you get there. I'll come out if you have a big problem, but usually I'm in the back. I'm working on 20 other events while yours is going on. This lady went to the meeting planner and asked to see me. And when I got out there, she said, I just want to thank you so much for preparing these meals the way I needed them. She was like, I'll become a lifelong customer now of this Embassy Suite because you went that extra mile. And so, once again, you just follow up with these people, and you're going to make a really big difference in their lives, and you're going to gain those lifelong customers because you put that extra human touch into your meetings. And then we want to also talk about our material format. Now, I know up here in Oregon, We're really supportive of our timber industry, but on the other side, we're also really progressive and we're trying to get away from paper stuff. But it is really, really important that you do offer both paper and electronic materials. I'm not saying you have to offer them in equal amounts. You know, you can have 10 paper materials over here for certain people that want them. But once again, this kind of helps more than just those we're talking about in the ability field. It's going to help those who are less receptive to technology. So at the Oregon Society of CPAs, when I was there, our average member was 65 and older. They didn't like electronic materials. Like most of them just did not like it. And so as much as I wanted to push to electronic materials, it was really important that we still had paper for those people that really wanted it to still be there. Secondly, those that are using assistive technologies. If you have electronic materials, that's super important for them. So if you're currently only a paper-only person, please go ahead and try to figure out a way to make those materials accessible. That's because people who are using certain technology, they can do text-to-speech. So my nephew is nonverbal and stuff, and he has a chair and a little iPad that comes out, and he can click on stuff and it'll read it to him. Because he can't read it, but he can hear like what it's saying and stuff like that. So it's really important that we have these options that can then be accessible for all. Secondly, once again, this is kind of just all-encompassing. So those that are visually impaired or those that just don't like the little 11-font writing on stuff, there's programs that they can download that actually zooms in those documents for them, and they can actually have it installed in their devices. And finally, there is text to Braille. So those that have visual impairments can actually use these programs, print them out, and they can actually read the words that you're giving them. Whereas if you just gave them paper material, they're not able to do that, and they can't easily convert it. They're going to have to work with somebody to get that converted for them. So as far as presentations go, we want to avoid using, we want to use a sans serif font. That just means a font without serifs. It's basically, if you look at an Arial E, it's like a very blocky E. There's no mistaking what that's going to be. Versus a Times New Roman, it's got the serifs, which are the little things that come up at the end. And so this is going to help those that are visually impaired, and it's also going to help that person that's way back in the ballroom, 100 feet away. You've only got one screen for them. It's all the way at the front of the room. You're using an 8 by 10-foot screen, very small. That can look like a C or a B or a D for people way in the back of the room. So really vet your presentations, especially if you're bringing in a lot of speakers and they're doing their presentations on their own. Go through them and kind of figure out, like, hey, this doesn't really look that great. Like, can we change this? And tell them why. And then maybe that helps them down the road for the next meeting planner that they come into contact with. So this may not actually be hard to read, but it's supposed to be. So if you're in the back of the room, that would absolutely be hard to read if we weren't on such a big screen. So it's dark text on a dark background. That's light text on a light background, and it says, but this text is harder to read. And then this is just cruel and unusual punishment. So when we're doing our presentations, they don't have to be boring. And I mean, I don't think my presentation is boring. I did use a Microsoft designed presentation. It's not white. It's like an offish gray or whatever. So it's not boring, but it allows everybody to easily be able to see it, easily be able to take notes. If we had a larger room, more people, heads are in the way, all that kind of stuff, people would be able to see this presentation hopefully pretty well. So once again, you really want to vet your speakers. When I was a meeting planner, this is one of the most time-consuming things I did. Was a presenter would send me their PowerPoint. I'd have to go through slide by slide and be like, dude, it's like crisscross in the background. Like, I can't even read it on my screen. Nobody's going to be able to read it from 10 feet away. Like, this is not going to work. So definitely vet your speakers and see what they're sending you. So this benefits attendees with visual impairments, learning disabilities, and those at the back of the room. So if you have a lot of videos, or your presenter has a lot of videos, you might want to consider adding closed captioning to those. Once again, this is just good meeting practices. It helps not only those that need it, but it helps people like me. I don't watch shows without subtitles on or closed captioning on. Some of you probably don't either. I can't understand people. Maybe their accent's too strong. Maybe they talk too fast. I'm guilty of that. If you put these closed captioning on your videos, it's just going to be more accessible for everyone. Everyone can see it. Everyone can hear it. They really know what's being talked about. And then, did you know Google Slides now offers an automatic closed captioning? So your presenters can actually pull up their slides on Google Slides, hit record, and talk, and it'll actually, as they go, give them closed captioning that they can then put into their presentations. I tried to put a example of this happening, but the River House doesn't have their computers updated, so I couldn't do that. But if you literally just Google Slides closed captioning, you'll see some really cool videos about how it works. And it is a fantastic program. It's way better than YouTube. Not even ever watched YouTube with closed captioning. It's not always the best. This one's really, really cool. So definitely, when you can, use this service. It's really neat. So secondly, and I'm not even following my own best practices right here, use a mic if the room is large. If there's more than about 20-ish people in the room, if the presenter is soft-spoken, or just based upon your attendee makeup. So once again, referring back to my time at the OSCPA with all those older members, it was really important that we had mics for our speakers, and that we vetted them. Because some speakers will walk up to you, especially if you know you're going to have a small conference, and they're going to be like, oh, I don't need a microphone. Well, maybe they don't, but you should absolutely check that first. I come from Texas, I come from the South, I'm a very loud person, I can shout all day long and my voice will not go out. And so usually I know I can be heard, but if this room was any larger, I would have definitely got AV in here to put that mic on. And I always, as a convention services manager, I'm really trying to preach to my meeting clients that if you've got more than about 20 or 30 people in the room, you likely need a microphone because you don't know what those people around them are going to be doing. They could be on their phones, they could be texting, they could be chatting with their neighbors, and now they've ruined the whole experience for everyone around them. So definitely, really think about when you need that mic. I get that it's an extra expense at the hotel. I will say that as a meeting planner, I bought my own mic, saved me a ton of money. Maybe something you should think about. It's very, very helpful. And also, some facilities are going to be able to offer you sound amplification tools, but some of them may not. So definitely, when you're doing your site selection and when you're planning your meeting, you need to ask the AV department at that hotel, ask your AV if you're outsourcing AV, ask the hotel in general, before I get there, do you have sound amplification tools? And I tell you this because 9 out of 10 times, unless you put that question that I put on your registration, somebody's not going to tell you this, and they're going to show up on site and be like, I need a sound amplification device. And if you don't know if that hotel has it beforehand, you're kind of SOL. What are you going to do at that point? So definitely check with your facilities before you get there if they're able to provide this, and if they're not, figure out how you're going to provide it. And secondly, depending on the makeup of your audience, you really should be considering if you need to be hiring an interpreter. That's a really important service, obviously. So, some meetings aren't going to need it. Some definitely will. So just really think about the makeup of your audience and figure out if it's something you should be doing. And I have some great resources that I can send folks if you want to connect with me. I have a person who works for, she was up here at the Oregon School of the Blind and Deaf, and now she's in Vegas, I think. But she's given me some great interpreters that are here in the Pacific Northwest that can help you out. I'd love to pass that on information to you. So definitely connect with me afterwards if you'd like that. Finally, we're all guilty of having our people yawn, and they're not paying attention, and they're on their phones, or whatever else is happening. However, really honestly, some people cannot sit and concentrate for long periods of time. I'm one of those people. I'm ADD. If you ask me to sit in a room for 60 or 90 minutes without giving me a break to get up, or the presentation is boring for any reason, I'm not listening. I mean, you've just completely lost my attention. I'm on my phone, I'm a millennial, I'm doing whatever else. So we really want to keep meeting best practices. About every 60 to 90 minutes, we need to be giving at least a 5-minute break. That allows people to get up, shake off, they want to move around or whatever. Allows them to get coffee and wake up, allows them to go to the bathroom. So it's really every 60 to 90 minutes. Technically, the best practices is 60 to 75 minutes. But depending on your speaker, you can get away with a little bit longer, especially if you don't want to, I've got a 90-minute presentation, I want to break them up in the middle or whatever. So really just be cognizant of when you should be offering your breaks and for how long. So as far as your room setup, who sets their rooms like this? Who reserves stuff in the front for folks? No one? I bet you're lying. So yeah, this is something that we actually used to do, and we kind of changed it around a little bit. So when you're including these people in your events, honestly, reserving the front row is not best practices. For one, you're forcing people to choose that seat. And think about if you went to a conference and they were like, hey, you must sit here. That's not great. I'm one of those people, I want to sit at the back of the room. I want to get up. I want to go to the bathroom when I want to go to the bathroom. I don't want to walk through 10,000 people. So it's really best if we're going to incorporate this stuff that we're reserving seats all across the room. That way, anybody for any reason, if they're in a chair, if they're in a scooter, if they're visually impaired, they can sit at the front, they can sit at the back, they can do whatever they want that feels comfortable for them, and we're not forcing that choice onto them. So once again, just meeting best practices, reserve those, accessible seating elsewhere in the room besides just at the front. Yay, check marks.
Can I also suggest that when you have a reserve sign, that you put a handicap signal on it or something?
Yeah.
Because most people come in and they just throw them, move and sit there.
Absolutely, yeah. We all know our people are just great sometimes. Yeah, definitely. You want to mark them while they're there. That way people, average Joes or whatever, are not just sitting there because, I'm entitled and I'm going to sit here because it says reserved or whatever. Make sure people know why it's reserved. There's something else that we really thought about at the OSCPA. We were doing electronic materials, and we had all those electronic materials folks reserved at the back of the room. And that was just for time's sake. It was easier to connect all their laptops on those back tables. But as I started to go to MPI and started talking to other people, I learned this from my colleagues when they were like, why are you making your electronic materials people sit at the back? You know, maybe somebody is visually impaired and they have electronic materials, and now you've made them sit at the back of the room. And so what we instead did is we actually eliminated that seating entirely, and we put some charging stations at the back of the room using rounds instead. And we put a little charging station on there, and we said, you know, charging station, that way anybody can use it, not just electronic materials if you needed to charge your phone. And we put a little sign there that said, charging station, if you're not actively using, please go somewhere else, because it only had like 6 or so seating. Now I can promise you that works great in practice, but it's not gonna work great actually at the meeting. People are gonna sit there the whole time. It's just something you gotta deal with. So just make sure you seat some extra seats around that station, just knowing that people are gonna definitely set up camp there and they're gonna stay there. Cool. So also, something that some of us may be guilty of is having a really long ballroom setting. So I put this little 200-foot ruler here. This is a problem because these people at the back of the room, if you're 200 foot back on a screen, they're not gonna be able to see what you're doing up there at the front. Absolutely, like, it's 100% not gonna happen. So actually, like I said, just took my CMP test. Meeting best practices states that the last row of your meeting space should be no more than 10 times the height of the screen. That's just meeting best practices. So if you have a really long ballroom, you should absolutely think about adding screens, you know, halfway back. So once again, this is one of those cost tools. It's definitely gonna cost you to put that screen up there, but it's something that we absolutely need to be thinking about doing. Mark it into your budget before you get going. You know, hey, I've got a ballroom that's for some reason 300 feet backwards. I know that I'm gonna need 2 extra projectors or 1 extra projector as I go. I'm building an extra $500 into my budget this year to make that happen. Cool. So some food and beverage considerations. We want to make sure that we have all items, and this is your plates, your cups, your utensils, anything that's being used to grab food and stuff. That's at a height where everyone can reach them and can see them. And we also, especially right now, this is a great time to talk about this. We don't want any attendees, no matter who they are, reaching across other food. So, you know, we're really trying to avoid pushing appetizer stations up against a wall and stacking them. So you've got, you know, cheeseburgers and chicken sliders. We don't want that because people are reaching, your face is there, coughing, whatever else. It's gross. Don't do that. So we really want to make sure that we're, you know, pulling those away from the wall, making sure there's room to get around if you're going to stack your stuff. That way people can actually get to them. And so, like I said, just make sure all that stuff is able to be reached by everybody and they're not reaching across the food to get it. And food signs should absolutely be at a level where everyone can read them. They should be in large, legible font, especially if you're doing a buffet. This is, if you have itty bitty 11-point font on your buffet, you just made your buffet take 30 minutes extra longer. No, put as little as you can on that food sign and blow it up as big as you can and put it on that thing, and then people are like, oh yeah, cheeseburger, I know what's on this, I'm good to go, and I'm flowing right through the line. And then you may have to consider if some attendees are going to need sign readers, so you know you can ask the hotel for help with that. Banquet staff can our hotel would do it in a heartbeat. I know most of your facilities and your banquet staff would do it in a heartbeat. Or consider if a member of your staff needs to go through the line with somebody for whatever reason. So once again, my attendee that I had with Parkinson's, I actually helped him like with his plate, and it's because no one else would. So like, just think about these things as people are coming to your meeting. How can you make it better for them? Because when you do, it turns into good business. So next thing we're going to tackle is a little bit of culture. So something that I think is really important for us to consider right now is having a prayer or meditation room during your meeting. And so I think best practices at this point are really to include this in your RFPs. Don't surprise a hotel with this. If you want, especially at a hotel, you know, if you want a meditation room, if you want a space where somebody can get away for a second, put that in your RFP and see if the hotel will give it to you as a concession at a cheaper discount, because it's only going to be used that day for your meeting, and so it's a lot less flipping that needs to go on, and it just gives people a space that they can go if they're going to pray, if they need to medicate, if they need a meditation space, whatever, they can go there, get some privacy, and get it done. And so these are Mecca arrows. We're starting to see these pop up a little bit more in event and facilities, which I think is a really great thing. And it's important because our Muslim friends, they pray 5 times a day facing the city of Mecca. It's important to their religion. They absolutely have to do it every single day. They have certain times a day they're going to do it. And kind of like this room that we're sitting in, my ballrooms, they don't have windows. It's really hard to orient yourself when you're in these facilities and figure out where you're going. And so I would really encourage, if you're a facility, to absolutely consider adding these. You just put it up in one corner. It's very small. And once again, the people who don't know what it is, it's not going to bother. They're not even going to realize it's there. But your Muslim attendees that need that, they're going to think the absolute world of you, I promise, because this is something that a lot of people are not currently doing, but it's beginning to become a better practice. So once again, just winning your customers over is what's really important. Secondly, when you're doing your site selection, you want to ask, is their kitchen willing to adapt to cultural food preferences. So this can be something as hard as, making the diet kosher or halal focused, and a lot of, admittedly, yes, I'm on the hotel side now, a lot of kitchens cannot do this. It's very hard. You need a religious leader there. Certain countertops have to be prepared certain ways. It can't touch anything else. It's really hard to do this. But see if this is something that you need, if they can outsource this and have it brought into the hotel at least for that meeting. And then, our chef is really great. So we have a lot of different cultures that will come in and do weddings and stuff, and they always want to know, oh, well, can I bring them outside food? All you in the hotel side are now laughing because, of course, they cannot bring in their own food. However, our chef is super, super good about working with those families. So recently we had I think it was a Filipino family come in, and they wanted to bring in their own food. We said, no, we can't do that. It's safe, food handling laws, safety, all that kind of stuff. But we're more than willing for you to give us your family recipes. We'll do tastings with you. If this person in your family will go get their certified license, like their food handler license, we'll let them back in the back, and they can watch chef do what he's doing. He can offer advice and stuff, and that makes a world of difference to our clients. We've actually booked several ongoing, from one family, several ongoing weddings because we were so willing to adapt to what they needed, and it was really important to them. And so see if their chef, if their kitchen is willing to allow those people to give them the recipes, make the different changes in food that they can, and just in general, see if your chef is willing to do different dietary accommodations. That's where we're getting out in the world. We need to be prepared for that. Your menus need to reflect those kind of things. Like I said, I don't really have time to get into it today, but food and beverage is a huge thing we're all getting into right now as far as including people goes. So on your registration form, you can absolutely ask, are you going to use accreditation or a meditation or prayer room if it's offered? It'll give you a good heads up. Maybe you don't need it. You can tell the hotel, hey, you know what, I don't need this space. That's fine. You can get rid of it. But it'll give you a good heads up in general. And then you can ask them, should food be prepared in a way that will meet your religious or cultural dietary needs? And then ask them to explain what that means to them. And so we've got some people, that aren't going to eat red meat at all. They're not going to do it at all. So I know we all hate that dreaded chicken plate, but it's usually the safest option that we have for a vegetarian meal. And so you really want to figure out before these people arrive on site what they're needing. So I want to say there's 80 days in the year that don't fall on a religious holiday. So it would be almost impossible for all of us to plan and let that happen, but we should make our best efforts to get around it. You should absolutely be moving your agenda around fasting times and prayer times as well. So give people enough breaks to get these things done. If you have a lot of different cultures coming, should you hire a translator? Should you offer materials in a different language? Okay, I put a female on this one, but this is a very white panel. Your speakers should reflect your audience. If you want them to come, they want to see themselves in what you're presenting, so make sure your speakers reflect that. If the hotel doesn't have these, you can definitely make them yourself. Black and green are good colors to use because those are the colors of Islam, so they recognize that. And if you don't have space for it, make one in your own thing. I know this is once again kind of a cost thing with a prayer room, but we can make it happen. We want to make sure that food labels are correct. We're offering meals around those fasting times. Foods should be in different languages if necessary. Some cultures are heavily against alcohol. If you're having a reception, make sure you're having other options. And chicken is one of the safest meal options that we have. I know people complain about it, but honestly, it's really our best practices to be using. So our socioeconomic status, some things that we can really think about. We're doing site selection. You found the perfect menu, but it's $250 to get a room there. So that's not always advisable or workable for some folks. So see if you can talk to hotels in the area and get smaller room blocks that are a little bit cheaper. It allows more people to attend your event. They've already paid a lot of money for your registration. Give them different options to get around. And then, is there an attendee roommate matching program? Now, this gets a little complicated, and we're talking about the LGBT community, but you can make it happen in ways. So just kind of think about those things. So now we've got our hotel. It's perfect, but there's nothing around it. The city's over here. The airport's over there. What are we going to do? So, are we offering mass transportation, and are we paying for it? It's kind of unfair to ask people to pay $500 to go to your event and then ask them to pay another $50 to get there. So are we offering Lyft and Uber codes and things like that? So once again, we found that perfect hotel. It's downtown. It's great. How many ways can they get there? So they're going to drive their car, but there's parking fees. Are we subsidizing that? Can they get there by public transit? Can they walk and bike there? So we want to make sure that we're either subsidizing transportation or we're giving multiple people ways to get there. As far as your registration, you can definitely offer different tiers to get people there. Have first-time attendees, volunteers, members, non-members, things like that. This is really helpful for those folks that really want to come. You can also offer scholarships for your whole time at the meeting, little time at the meeting, just your registration, just your travel, just your lodging, things like that. And I really think something that we should all be doing is offering convince your boss templates. These can usually be created and then just reused every event. But especially for our new meeting professionals, it's sometimes really hard for those to get out of the office and say, hey, this is really important for my education, I really want to come to it. So I think this is something that we should all be trying to do right now. So once again, materials, paper and electronic. Electronic tends to be cheaper, so if you're going to charge for those paper materials, please make sure that there's an electronic version that's free. And if your registration fee for some reason does not include materials, really consider what's necessary. Do we need 5 textbooks that cost $100 each? Food and beverage considerations with this, are there low-cost meal options available, and does the facility allow outside food and drink? We know what that second answer is usually going to be, but make sure that, if the meal is not being paid for, it's not at a resort where the meal is going to cost them $50. Like, make sure there's a McDonald's next door or a market in the hotel that they can go to. And then does the reception include drink tickets? I'm sorry, but if you're having a reception and it does not offer drink tickets, it's not a good practice. You're alienating some people. It's really important, we're all socializing over drinks and stuff like that. You need to give at least 1 drink ticket so that everyone feels included and can enjoy that space. Now this one's really important to me. When we're doing site selections for LGBT individuals, this is actually a matter of safety, really, is what it is. So this includes overall LGBT protection policies. And this map is just for gender identity protections. Everything in red is somewhere that you really don't want to hold an event, in my opinion. WEC this year will be down in Texas, and I can tell you, I will not go because I'm not protected in Texas. Texas has literally made it recently legal for me. If I were to have a heart attack at that conference, the EMTs could refuse to treat me because I'm a transgender individual. So I will not attend your meeting if it's in Texas because it's not safe for me to go to. So as meeting planners, we really need to be thinking about this. As hotels, we're all up here. But you need to be, if this stuff happens, and it usually doesn't in Oregon and Washington, actually there is one going through in Washington right now, we need to be lobbying for the best business practices, and excluding LGBT individuals, I promise, is not it. It's terrible for business.
Jason, can I make a short suggestion?
Yeah.
Steve Rutner, who
Yes.
many of you know because he's an attorney for hotels, and some of you may even listen to his monthly call, is also very active in LGBT issues in Texas and nationally. And so if you follow him on Facebook, you can get a lot of really good information, and he
Absolutely.
knows the industry.
Yeah. Steve is a hotel lawyer, actually. He's a really great contact. I know him. He was president of Equality Texas. So he's just a really great connection. If you need his information, I'll happy to give it to you. Tell me I can. So Steve is really great, especially as far as like legal things go. So you really want to be really cognizant of this. I promise you're going to alienate people if you don't do these things. So just some background right now. As of February 1 right now, there are over 35 anti-LGBT bills making their way through the state level at this exact moment. I read last night there were at least 10 more being introduced that are attacking transgender children and their abilities to get hormone replacement therapy. So the ACLU has now deemed 2020 one of the most hostile years for the LGBT community in recent years. Who remembers HB 2 from 2017? That was the bathroom bill that went through North Carolina. Yeah, so that was terrible for business. It would have cost North Carolina $3 billion in 10 years. In the 1 year that it was active, they removed it because it was so bad. In the 1 year that it was active, Greensboro Coliseum lost over $1 million in events. $14 million was lost in Greensboro from the NCAA pulling all their events out. The $83.9 million in direct spending went for cancellations in Charlotte alone, and 63,000 hotel rooms were lost. And this was because cities and states enacted travel bans to North Carolina. They told their employees, you are not allowed to go to North Carolina on state-funded money because they're so discriminatory. I was looking this up a little bit today. North Carolina, so it's been 3 years since this happened. Into their state budget every single year in their travel and tourism budget, they have an extra $3 million going to counteract what this left for them. So as suppliers especially, if these come through Oregon and these come through Washington, we must lend our voice to stop this because it is going to destroy the travel and tourism industry. We've already seen it happen, it's going to do it again. So we absolutely have to be lobbying for what's correct. So once again, as meeting planners, we must do our due diligence to protect our attendees, and we must lobby against legislation that will harm our revenue. And like I said, this is not, everything else is like, like we're talking about disabilities and stuff like that, you absolutely need to have this stuff. This is dangerous. This matters to people like me because it is physically dangerous for me to attend things that are not in the correct spaces. So one of the things, this is why it's so important when I talk about putting this stuff on your website and stuff. Google has actually added the ability to make your business LGBT friendly. You can put that on there. Most recently, they have a new one where you can put LGBT friendly, and there's another one that says transgender safe space. I was really excited to learn about that. And here's why you need to put this on here, because I can tell you, I'm looking for this when I go to places. Other LGBT individuals are looking for this mark when they go to your businesses. I've not eaten at a Chick-fil-A in over 7 years, and I won't go to a Chick-fil-A until they change their policies. We are in a capitalist consumer society, and our dollars matter. Put this on your website if you're friendly, and make it happen. And that's the other thing. If for some reason you were at a hotel where something like this was, where we had some bills going through or whatever, it is so important that you put that on there, because then your meeting planners are going to be choosing you because they know at minimum their attendees are safe at your facility. So these are some recent things that have been done by Hilton, which I'm a part of and really proud of, and also Marriott. So they actually introduced LGBT traveling initiatives to really say, you know what, we're here for you, we want you at our hotels, and we support what you're doing. And so once again, one of the best things that we can do is make our support known on our websites and things like that where people can easily access it. So when we're looking at site selections, we want to see if there's any unisex or family bathrooms, and if not, can one be converted? We don't have any in our hotel, but we do have some bathrooms in our convention area, and we'll convert them. We're doing it next week. We did it for a group 2 months ago, and as a transgender male, they don't know this, but I was so pleased that they were asking us to do this. It was really cool. Secondly, something that we're not really thinking of are these little itty-bitty trash cans in bathrooms. It's really important to have those in male bathrooms, and I'll let you just think about why. Our hotel actually did this. My director of sales has a transgender friend, and he said, hey, what's one of the main things you run into when you're out in public? And he said, well, I'm biologically female, and it's really hard for me to use bathrooms that don't have these trash cans in them. So our hotel actually went, this is not our hotel, this is a terrible picture. This is not our hotel. but our hotel actually went and did this. I talked to my general manager, and he said that the supplies cost $300. Our engineers installed it for $0. And the impact that it made on me the first time I walked in that hotel for my job interview was immediate. I saw that trash can, and I said, this is where I want to be. I want to be an employee here because I know why this is here. So on our registration, we will only be asking ourselves, is there a reason that we need to know the gender of our attendees? I mean, really think about it. Some of us are doing demographics, and it's absolutely important then, but if you're not going to be using that information, don't ask it. It's completely pointless. And you really want to give people an option to choose how they're going to identify. I always recommend, if you really want to know the makeup of your individuals, ask. If you're not going to put male, female, trans, female, put it in there, because I never know who wants to know if I'm there or not. So sometimes I'll put self-describe as trans man. That way you know that somebody in the transgender community has come to your event. But if you put it up there, I know, hey, you know what? They're not really worried about those demographics. I'm going to click now, and that's fine. Same thing. Do I need to know the legal name of my attendees? Now, when I was at the OSCPA, that was a licensing thing. We absolutely had to know the legal names of them, or we couldn't give them their credit. But there was no reason that we had to put that on their name tags. So absolutely give people a place for their legal name if they need it, and if not, give them a place for their preferred name, and have that on their name tags, or give them a space to put it on their name tags. And then also provide a space for pronouns. So, my pronouns are, and I prefer, whatever. You don't necessarily put these on I suggest you do. I think it's a good practice. But have them at your registration table. Leave a space, pronouns. That way people can write them if they want to, or they don't have to. There's little stickers now. There's a lot of things that we can do to really support this community. Please don't use other. It's shame bell. It's terrible. Don't use other. I'm not an other. Don't put other on there. Our presentations really encourage your speakers to not use gendered language, such as welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A much better option is, welcome everyone, welcome attendees. There's a lot of things we can do in this round that really don't exclude people when we use these terminologies. Instead of grouping by gender, literally group by anything else. There's just no reason, thank you. There's no reason that we're grouping by gender today, none whatsoever. We can do types of shoes, your shirt color, your favorite color, whatever. Don't do it by gender. So we're doing now gender, female, male site selection. So see if the men's room has a baby changing station, especially if you're in a hotel. This is not for meeting attendees. This is just for your general clientele. Like you got a single dad or a dad just traveling with the kids, and he has nowhere to change them in your public spaces. That looks bad. But we all know that males are really elevated in society. So what we're actually talking about is women. So we want to know what our hotels are going to do for pumping rooms. Are they able to offer you that space? What do they have? OCC has these little modules like this. I think they're really, really cool. So just ask the hotel, what can you offer me for a pumping station? Same thing as far as our agenda. We really want to make sure our meeting and start and end times are cognizant of school zones. We're really alienating a lot of women attendees when we're not doing this because, kids have to be picked up, dropped off, and usually women are the primary caretakers of the children, and that's unfortunate. We need to get away from that anyway. But if we're cognizant of this, we can really make a big change. And then multi-day destination meetings should absolutely leave time for all parents to make calls home and check in on kids and stuff like that. MPI, Cascadia does a great job. We have a little bit of downtime to get out and stuff. Wow, there's a lot of men and a lot of whiteness going on there. No, stop with the mantle. It is terrible. Do not. So this actually says, it's a terrible picture, but this says Global Summit of Women, and there's 5 guys sitting there. No, don't do that. So anyway, the mantle. There's actually a Tumblr now dedicated to the mantle. So if you have a mantle and somebody takes a picture, they can submit it to this Tumblr, and you will be dragged. So don't do it.
Oh, Chase, what about Gender Avenger?
Gender Avenger.
It's the most fabulous. They have tools you can use at your meeting
Oh.
to grade the meeting on diversity of speakers, and it is.
Okay.
PCMA used it for the annual meeting, and they are outstanding. And
Cool.
they're
All
grading
right.
even like the front page of the New York Times on how diversity is represented.
Yeah.
So it's genderavenger.com.
Cool. All right, genderavenger.com. Everybody use that, and then don't get dragged on public media. So, also seek women speakers out, and I think one of the most important things that we can do is really vet our speakers. I went to a conference recently where a lady, she was from Dallas, and I should have known this was coming, but she got up and she said, "Let's talk about how people talk in business." And she goes, "Here is traditional business talk. It's white males." And then the next slide said, "Asian speak," and I was like, "Oh my God." And I literally, it was a conference for accounting associations, and I literally watched 20 people get up and walk out. So like, if you have a public speaker and if they have great ratings, look at their presentations, because like, you don't want that to happen, because they put her ratings for that conference were terrible. The conference organizers got dragged for it. Just really, really vet your speakers. That's so important. So when we're talking about men and women as far as what we're doing at our things, we really want to make sure that we're having seating available during receptions. A lot of women are having to wear heels. It's just what is expected of women in business dress now. And so if we have seating, we're making that much more accessible for everyone, but also people who are tired of being on their feet all day. So just offer some different seating at your receptions. Secondly, us men are great at carrying wallets and making our wives and everybody else carry everything else in their purse. My fiance walks around with like a box of tissues for me and hers. So we want to make sure that we have a complimentary bag and coat check. When you really think about it, I know I'm preaching to the choir for women here, but men, when they network and stuff, we don't really have a lot in our hands. But when women network, they have a bag, they have their drink, they have their plate and everything, and us men are over here like, yeah, we're fine, whatever. And also men who use MERSes, have a bag check for them. So what we didn't cover, age, introverts, because that is who MPI's inclusion thing said that we were least serving, and I thought that was kind of humorous when we're talking about really big things and then we're talking about somebody's personality traits. Whatever, not going to drag MPI for that, but a little upsetting. So we didn't cover those who consume alcohol a whole lot, dietary needs, and are deep dive into any one subject. I just didn't have enough time. MPI Academy is a great resource. You can get on MPI Academy, look up diversity and inclusion, you'll pull up a bunch of stuff, especially food and beverage considerations. Great for that. That's why I didn't want to cover it today. So go to MPI Academy. So MPI's motto is, when we meet, we change the world. But we can't change it unless we are changing it. So I hope that you're all in here right now and that you'll take some of this stuff home. You'll start doing it in your meetings. You'll start looking at your facilities. You'll start talking to your director of sales, your general managers, your leadership support, and really ask them, these are what I want to do and this is why I want to do it, and show them the numbers. I promise if you Google diversity and inclusion statistics, you'll have all the fodder and all the ammunition you need to say this is why our business needs it. And then something that I always say right now is respect costs us nothing to give, but lack of respect will cost our industry everything. If you do not include people in your events, you have immediately, you've lost that clientele. They're not going to come back. Once again, just preaching that we are a consumer society. We're very brand loyal today. She touched on that in the opening session. If you make a lasting impression on somebody, they trust your brand, they trust you, they'll come back, and it turns into, year after year, a dedicated clientele support. So just keep that in mind. If we're not actively including, we're excluding, and we can't be doing that in this industry. So this is how you can get in touch with me. I created Chasing Changes. That's supposed to be rainbow, and that looks horrible up there, but it's diversity and inclusion seminars. I also do some diversity consulting. I can work these around your business. I worked it around MPI to just talk directly to meeting professionals. I can talk about my experiences as a transgender male in the world right now. I did a lot of this stuff at A&M. I spoke in a lot of speaker panels and stuff. So, if you're looking for diversity and inclusion stuff, I'd love to help you out. I feel like I know a lot about it because I'm in a traditionally marginalized community. So this is the ways you can connect with me. I have a website, it's chasingchanges.com. That's my email addresses. If you want to connect with me on the supplier side and you want to give me your business, please do. That's how you can reach me on business tweets. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's my personal cell phone number. Shoot me a text, call me, whatever you want to do. I really want to make a difference in the meeting industry, and I really want to help people do that. So as meeting planners, as suppliers, we've really got to start turning the tides on here, and we've really got to start doing more because it will trickle out to other things. So thanks for coming, guys.